let's start with extinction and extinction topics. There are many subjects related to extinction. A lot of people like to go along the lines of politics. Everybody's an expert in politics because it depends on whether it's your opinion, your recommendation, what you think, how you think the world should be run, that sort of thing. We're not so interested in that here, at least. We try to concentrate more on the mechanism of extinction, how it's going to happen. Okay, so let's start with extinction. And here we have a lady. I'll start with a little article that came out. And and she says, Tracy Stone Manning, President Joe Biden's nominee to lead the Bureau of Land Management, argued that Americans need to have fewer children and called American kids environmental hazards. My God, does she really believe this? We must consume less, and more importantly, we must breed fewer consuming humans. And one lady that they quote in that article is not her, but someone else said, it would be my third baby, but there's not a population problem here like in Africa or India. And besides, smart people like Bob and me should be the people having kids. Okay, should we have fewer kids? Maybe they should do the, what is it, like the Chinese did, you know, the one child per family rule. You can't have more than one kid. Is that what we should do maybe? You know, just put a law there that if you have two kids, we got to kill the second one or put you in jail or fine you or whatever. Okay, another issue related to extinction, a little more related to extinction, I guess. This is Michio Kaku, and he's a futurologist now. He tries to tell us what the future looks like. See, all these people are into predictions. Once you study math, mathematical physics, then you become an astrologer. That's the next step. You make a lot of money just making predictions. And he quotes Carl Sagan, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk. And he says for Carl Sagan that one day, Carl Sagan told him this. He says, an asteroid will hit us one day. We have to make humans a two-planet species. What was Sagan talking about? Well, he was talking about, you know, if we happen to screw up this planet, maybe World War III, or we pollute it or whatever thing, well, then we have this other planet where consciousness can continue living, intelligence. And sometimes I wonder how much intelligence these people really have. Jeff Bezos, he says, we have to make the earth a grand park. Okay? We should relocate all polluting industries to space or to the moon. And this should be just a garden. Okay? Is that ever going to materialize? Is that ever going to happen? We're going to move all the heavy industry, all the polluting industry. Yeah, no problem. You want to pollute, go to the moon. We'll pollute the whole moon after all. It's just a stone out there. You know, we just got to transfer all the production over there. And here we live, I guess, doing services all day long, robots serving us. Great life, huh? I think these people think a little too much, or maybe they're not enough, I guess. Then Elon Musk, he's the SpaceX project manager, I guess you could say. He wants to create a multi-planet species. We should go to several planets. He wants to ship 1 million passengers to Mars. 1 million people. You know, like several trips, little by little, and we populate at least a region of Mars. We'll have 1 million people there, hopefully self-sustaining, which is what he's thinking about, okay? And here's a little more detail of what Elon Musk is proposing. Give me a second here. This is what he's proposing. He's saying multi-planet species and safe spacefaring civilization. We're going to be floating in space, you know, going all around. Our future is in space, the final frontier, you know. Ensure continuance of consciousness. Okay, that way we guarantee that consciousness will not die. Okay. Is it a problem if it does? Don't you think that even if consciousness dies here on Earth, there's going to be some other planet out there in the middle of nowhere that also creates consciousness, just like the Earth did here? Maybe there is a planet somewhere out there already, far away probably. Okay, so the fact that consciousness dies here on Earth and that we didn't get to go to the moon or to Mars or anywhere, and then someone turns the light out on the Earth, is that a problem? I mean, I think you should worry about yourself, okay? And not have these idealistic things for all of humanity. Okay? People take decisions for all of humanity here. He wants to put a self-sustaining city on Mars. If ships from Earth stop coming, for example, World War III, right? That's what these people are thinking. can the city sustain itself? Okay, and it must happen before World War III, because if we do it if World War III happens first, is there any chance whatsoever that we can create a colony on Mars? So he's suggesting that we should have this rush to hurry it up before that World War III comes around. Okay, I guess people are fearing that that will happen. I guess if you ask a lot of people out there, do a poll or whatever, I'm sure a lot of people will say that they think it's very possible. Now, what percentage, I don't know. They have that doomsday clock there, and they keep moving it back and forth, depending on, what's going on in the world. Sometimes they move it closer to 12 o'clock, sometimes closer to 10 o'clock, it goes back and forth, that hand on the clock. How close are we to 12 o'clock, meaning Third World War III, and will that be the demise of man if we go, if we have a war of that nature where we throw the nukes, the bioweapons, we talked about that a little bit the other day. If we throw the nukes, if someone presses that red button, will that be the end of man? Okay, or will someone survive and restart the world again? Okay, keep that question in mind. Okay, we'll see if we can address that. Okay, fellow says, and again, here we have the political aspect of extinction. Bill doesn't know and doesn't believe about the existence of great powers like the financial credit elite and Zionism and Christian Catholic, Apostolic, and Islam and blah, blah, blah. He doesn't know and doesn't believe that the world politics are under these great powers. And he knows and he believes that the state and the state governments are in charge. Well, the first thing we have to do is put it in the right context. Belief is not a part of science, okay? Belief is part of religion. So irrespective of what I believe, it's got nothing to do with science, especially in this case with extinction, which is the mechanism of extinction, okay? So whether I believe in this or that doesn't matter. The first thing we have to point out is this. Put it on the other side. Give me a second. What happened to it? Oh, I see what happened. Give me a second here. Put it behind the other one. Okay. This is the scientific method. Okay. What is science? Rational explanations. And where in the scientific method, which goes under that, step 1, step 2, step 3, where do you find belief? Okay. In the scientific method, we make assumptions, and then we build the theory on those assumptions. So you can make an assumption that Zionism is out there and that Catholic Church is doing something, that Islam is doing whatever. And you can make any assumption and then build your theory upon that so that we can understand what's going through your mind. We can understand your theory. But just to say that, Bill doesn't believe, well, you haven't said anything. We don't know what you're talking about. What is the conclusion? What is your theory? That's what we wish to know or understand. And so, without that, you have nothing, at least for this channel. You really have to try to concentrate on science and not just say, well, he believes in this and he believes in that. We all have beliefs, and beliefs play no role whatsoever in science. So get the word belief out of your mouth. Never use it again, not here, okay? Unless you're saying, well, the religious folk believe. That's fine. You can say something like that, but not in the context of science, okay? Don't bring the word belief. Okay, another issue someone raised, fellow says, both people in a trade are buyers and sellers. Because I talked about the fact that, well, I'll get into that in a second, but essentially, I put the other day that you have 3 situations. You have the buyer, seller, and seller, seller. Okay, and that's what he's addressing. And I'm saying that seller, seller is the only one that's capitalism. Buyer, seller is communism. And buyer is leisure, unemployment, manna from heaven. Okay, so that's the context in which I put these 2 words, buyer and seller. And he's addressing that. He says both people in a trade are buyers and sellers. Well, he's just repeating the party line of what everybody out there thinks or the way they look at these 2 words. Okay, he hasn't put anything new. In fact, I don't think he understood what I said at all. Okay, if you had a boat and I have money and we trade them, then I bought a boat by selling you money and you bought money by selling me a boat. Yeah, in other words, he said the same thing that everybody else says. So he didn't understand squat. Okay, but I'm going to the next part there. Transaction is capitalist as long as it is voluntary, meaning no force or coercion was used. You needing food to survive doesn't count as involuntary because that is forced onto you by nature, not humans. Okay, so yeah, again, I don't think this fellow understood anything of what I said. So let me repeat it. Okay, here it is. Okay, that's the situation. You have these three different situations. One is where you have a buyer and a seller. Okay, buyer and a seller, that's known as communism. It's not known as capitalism, it's known as communism. Why? Because we have to look at what the buyer is doing here. Okay, if you just look at the buyer, you don't know if he's giving something in exchange. And I'll get to that in a second, okay? But here are the three categories, essentially, or three situations. Then you have a buyer, the guy who receives manna from heaven. He's served by robots. Nobody works on planet Earth. There's not even a government. There's no military. You're just receiving stuff free from who knows what. Maybe the robots are working the land. If Jeff Bezos has his way, they're working in Mars or in on the moon, and they're bringing the stuff to you from over there, grapes and whatever they are planting and harvesting up there, and they bring them over here, all done by robots, and all we do, all 8 billion, 9 billion, 10 billion of us, however many we are at the time that this happens, we all receive. And we all receive all this free stuff from heaven. So we're all buyers. We're not giving anything in exchange. Okay? And then, of course, you have the capitalist, which is the true capitalist, which is a seller. There are no buyers in capitalism. There are only sellers. Okay? And you say, Bill, what the hell are you talking about? Okay, so let's find out what I'm talking about. Let's define these terms so that we can use them consistently. I'll show you what I'm referring to. Okay? A little more detail than the other day. Seller, what is a seller? This is out of the dictionary. No special word here, okay? But I'm going to cut it short. I'm going to cut it where I should cut it, or where I think it should be cut, okay? A person who sells, okay, gives. No inkling of anything else, whether he's receiving anything in return. It just sells. I'm giving something away, okay? For now. Just bear with me, okay? Now, we look at sell. It says to transfer goods or render services, and then they have that little piece saying, saying in exchange for money. Or you can put anything in there, in exchange for something, okay? And so that's where we have a problem. Seller, should we stop at the just gives away and not talk about what he receives in exchange? Seller just gives, okay? That's my proposal. I'm saying he's just a giver, okay? What is a buyer under this proposal? Well, buyer is a person who buys. So we look up the word, which means receives. We look up the word buy, okay? It says to acquire the possession of or the right to. And then they add, by paying or promising to pay an equivalent, especially in money, purchase, blah, blah, blah. And I'm saying we should take that last part out, what's enclosed in green there. I think we should say buyer is someone who receives. So one is a giver, the other one is a receiver. Now, you have situations like, someone gives and doesn't receive, we call it donation or donator or donor, okay? And if he takes without giving, we call it stealing, okay? So we have all these nuances in between humans, because this is all human stuff, the rest of the animal kingdom typically doesn't do trade, they do stealing. I've seen hyenas take away from cheetahs and from other lesser animals, weaker animals, and they just go in there and take whatever they think they can get. So they do steal. There is stealing out there, okay, in the wild kingdom. But in general, these are the situations. What am I talking about? Well, this is what I'm talking about. Let's go into a little more detail, okay? Here it is. We have to distinguish between a buyer who receives without giving, okay, and a buyer who receives and does give. We call this one capitalism. If he gives something in exchange, right, it's capitalism, and if he gave something, he's a seller. Okay, he gave something, he's a seller. Okay, and if he receives something without giving anything in exchange, well, we call that communism. The government or whatever, welfare, socialism. You just receive. You don't have to give anything in return. Lenin had that idea or I think it was Marx, from each according to his capabilities, to each according to his needs, right? Well, what if you only have one way of flow of that, to each according to his needs? And you don't provide any of your abilities, either because there's no work, or maybe you're quadriplegic, maybe you cannot provide anything, maybe you're a veggie, and we want to keep you alive. I don't know why, but we do. And because we keep you alive, we just give you. We give you care, we give you food, we give you everything, and you can't do anything about it because you cannot contribute to the global economy in any way. So you're receiving, okay? You're only receiving. And we got to factor that guy. And in the case of seller at the bottom, we have a similar situation. We have to distinguish between the giver who receives, right? And there's an exchange there. We call that capitalism. But the giver who doesn't receive, well, we typically refer to that as communism, right? Socialism, welfare state, whatever you want to call it. And we've got all these names for it, right? And so what I'm saying here, why is this relevant in the context of the extinction theory? Well, it's relevant because I say that we're becoming more and more, okay, receivers who do not give, okay? There will be more welfare people, more unemployed people eventually. And so we got to factor the language here. We got to say, well, these people are receivers. Do they buy? Yeah, they buy, but they don't sell. Okay, that's my point. And if you buy and don't sell, you got to I call him a buyer, but the correct word is receiver. He's a receiver. And right now we don't know where he got all that stuff from. For all we know, he got it from heaven, manna just, falling down in his hands or in his lap. The only time we really have capitalism is seller-seller. Then, yeah, someone gives and the other one gives. Okay? But if it's a one-way flow, we call that communism. Okay? And so I want to distinguish the receiver from the giver. Okay? Because I'm saying more and more people will become receivers and fewer people will become givers. Okay? That's the argument. Okay, moving on here. Get another one here. One fellow says, it could be that when basically now the system breaks down, meaning extinction or approaching extinction, the global economic collapse, that's what he's referring to here, it really is built back better, okay? Meaning less communist. Okay? That last part is politics, okay? Unless he's trying to say something special, there, I don't know. But this is like saying, oh, it might be a good thing to have like a World War III, erase the board, start all over again. Okay? Will it be like that? I mean, we erase the board, can we come back? Okay, and then he says fiat currency falls to zero. Okay, it says all money goes to zero. Then people begin using real money, gold and Bitcoin. So he thinks gold is real money, Bitcoin is real money, but he says all the other stuff, especially dollars and so on, that's not money. Okay, but I like his last statement there. He said, just because a currency and or government fails doesn't mean all trade ends. I tend to disagree. Okay, yeah, the day that currency fails, including gold, including Bitcoin, okay, nobody should accept that anymore because what are you going to do with Bitcoin? What are you going to do with gold? What is gold? Gold is a rock. Is limestone any better than gold? I mean, I'll give you limestone for your banana if you want, or your apple. If you'll give me your apple, I'll give you limestone, a rock, any rock you want. You want gold? Okay, I'll give you real gold if you can do something with it. What are you going to do with it? And Bitcoin's a number in a computer. Once we get the hackers in there, messing around with the global internet, even Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and all these people will be as rich as you are overnight. They just press one button, all those accounts go wacko, go out of, so yeah, I mean, the issue is that if government falls, if the global economy collapses, meaning money will be no more, all kinds of money will be no more. The only money of any importance will be food, and it won't be money because it will be the only thing of value. In that sense, you can say it's food, it's money, but nobody will trade it. In which sense it's not money, because money is that which you trade. It's what you use, something of value that you trade, that you exchange. If you have something of value but you don't trade it, it's known as food. It's known as food after the global collapse. That's what it's called. Okay? So no, once the global economy collapses, there won't be any money. Okay, because that's the point. The point of the theory is saying there won't be any money. We will not accept money. We will not accept any kind of money for the whatever amount of food that you have, because the only thing of value will be food. It's the only thing keeping you alive. You're not going to trade the only thing that has value, which is what nourishes you in real life, for what? For gold, for Bitcoin. And just do the thought experiment. You and your buddy, you got shipwrecked, or you're marooned on an island. It's just you two, and you ended up in different sides of the mountain, and you've got all this food that you were able to get out of the ship in a little boat, and you came ashore, and now you got all this food. And your friend, he got the treasure chest. Okay, he's got all this gold, diamonds, jewels. And he comes over and says, Joey, here, I'll give you a whole bag of gold. And he just comes in here, or an ingot of gold. 1 kilogram of gold. I mean, that's worth a lot. And I'll give it to you for that banana or for that apple. Will you trade? Well, if you do, you're a sucker. You got mental problems. Okay, you don't understand. No. When you're stuck on an island, you have no use for Bitcoin. Believe me. Okay, another fellow says even worse. He says self-sufficiency. He says that you're going to do. See, you have two types of people. One is the survivor. Okay. And the other one is, and that's the guy that goes out on a mountain and with a gun and a backpack, and he's going to do hunting after everything collapses. Okay, and then you have the others that plant the garden, and they say, I'm going to do some gardening. Okay, and I'm going to grow my own potatoes and my own tomatoes and everything, and I'll be okay after the collapse. Well, the big problem here is not whether, like he says, they understand how to do it. That's not an issue. The issue is not how to do it, which is a problem. Obviously, if you're a city guy, you've never been in the farm, well, you may not know how to plant. You may not know about the season. You may think banana grows, on trees or whatever, So you may need some information. That's true. But I think it's irrelevant. Anyone who's got a garden, he'll be run over, at the last moment by all people from the city, all these city folks that don't know anything about farming, and they're just going to go out there and steal. It's not called stealing. They're just going to eat like the locusts. They're going to swarm all over your farm. If you've got any live animals like chickens or pigs or whatever, they're going to kill them and slaughter them. What are you going to do? Just shoot every person in town? Thousands of them, many of them with guns. And then obviously they're going to take all your veggies from your garden. And if you're alone, you haven't planted very much. How many acres can one person plant? And even if you have a tractor, okay, I mean, one person, how much can he plant? And then, assuming you plant a lot, I don't know, several acres because you're really good, how do you patrol that with your 6-shooter or whatever? You need a machine gun, even that won't help you. You need a cannon, even that won't help you. You'll need a nuke to get rid of all the people. They're just going to come in and eat. And then you have this little kid, eating, a piece of your corn. You're going to grab your gun, shoot him in the head. Don't eat my corn. No, so the problem's going to be security. You have no 911 after the global collapse. Okay, so this notion that we're going to survive and we're going to restart the human race, Adam and Eve thing again, it's never going to happen. Once the whole world collapses, more or less, there are going to be pockets of people here and there that survive. I think that's almost guaranteed. But they're just going to live out their lives. They're not going to be going out there and saying, oh, let's start the whole thing all over again, especially after we've wiped out all our genetic diversity. We have no genetic diversity today. Whatever pockets survive, you're going to have this, this small group, founders effect. And from that wiped out genetic diversity, you have no genetic diversity among you in that little group that maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 people maybe. You're going to start the human race again. You're going to have children by the hundreds, assuming women don't forget what it was all about. Okay. No, and a woman would not put herself in that situation either because, you won't have all the niceties of hospitals and doctors and nurses tending to you. You're going to have the baby out there in a cave. So I don't know how many women will want to do that, especially after we've gotten used to the city life. We have all these comforts we take for granted. I'm not sure that woman is going to go out there and say, oh, I'm going to have a baby. Maybe one might have on planet Earth, but certainly we're not going to restart the race again, the human race again. Okay, one fellow says, a little more closer to my subject, which is the dinos and how they disappeared, okay? And he says, if the food pyramid that inverts were the most critical in numerous food chains, such as plankton, okay, which is the food for the food for the food for many, might that not lead to a mass extinction? Okay. Would that not explain part of how the sea creatures went extinct when the big animals went under 65 million years ago? Okay. Might not all of that be one big food chain collapse that commenced when the smaller sea creatures died and spread up the chain, going up to reptiles, large mammals, if any, and even insects? Okay, yeah, that is the theory I'm proposing. Okay, this is what you See, this is just one food chain since he talked about the seas, okay? And here you see it, okay? This is more or less what the seas look. This is just one food chain in the seas, okay? This is at the end of the Cretaceous, okay? And what you see here is at the bottom of the food chain, you have the phytoplankton, okay? And what is that? Well, seaweed and other algae that rely on the sun to grow and to, to reproduce and all that stuff. And then they're preyed upon by the herbivores of the sea, the small herbivores, which are the zooplankton, okay? The zoo or zooplankton. And what they do, they're going to eat all this stuff, and they're going to live on it, okay? So these are herbivores, and some of them are carnivores also within that group, okay? And they might attack one of the herbivores. But then you have the bigger animals, the higher level, you can say. Someone talked about the higher animals, okay? So we'll call these higher animals. They're just higher on the food chain. They can eat someone below. And so they're going to eat some of the zooplankton, both herbivores and carnivores. And then you have the big monsters like the reptiles, like the mosasaurs, and they fed on the ammonites, who were, these filter feeders and so on. And you also have fish in between. I didn't put all the animals, that should have been in that picture. I'm just showing you a very small food chain, and that's more or less what it looked like, okay? And so, yeah, one of the issues that we've verified, okay, through the layer of rock, okay, and you can look up some of these papers that have been written out there. There's several of these, okay, so it's not like one paper out there that says it's several of them. It's like a consensus among the paleontologists that this is the description of what they see in the rock. What do they see? Well, they see that the big ones, the big plankton were the ones that went away at the KT boundary, essentially. Some went over the boundary and lasted a few more years, but essentially what died out close to the KT boundary were the big foraminifera, diatoms, and so on. These animals and phytoplankton disappeared, essentially, most of them. And that was the food that the ammonites depended upon. And the mosasaurs primarily fed on ammonites, and there were ammonites all over the place. Ammonites are used as an indicator fossil for almost the entire life on Earth. They look at that because they were so numerous in every age. Okay? They were very numerous, and they had hard shells, so that survived to a great extent. And so they're used as indicators. Okay? And yeah, so we know that the ammonites disappeared at the KT boundary, and that's what the mosasaurs ate, and they disappeared at the KT boundary. And so the question is, did they disappear because an asteroid hit the Earth, which is what the reigning theory is out there? Well, that asteroid would not be able to explain selectivity. And here you can explain selectivity, for that whole food chain that you see there, simply by noting that the plankton that they ate also disappeared at the KT boundary. Okay, so that's the point there. Okay, next issue is that, like I always like to say, you have to do, and if possible, it's recommended, you are urged to do this, to do Extinction 101 before you do Extinction 102. 101 is animal extinction, animals that actually died in the past. So once you figure how they died, how they disappeared, how they became extinct, maybe you can extrapolate that mechanism to man and say, well, which is Extinction 102, and say, well, can man do anything about that same mechanism? And, the person who just treats it very superficially usually says, man can do anything. We can solve any problem. We can look ahead. Our intelligence allows us to look ahead, fix any problem that comes towards us. Well, there are certain things we can't do. We can't live forever, no matter what. Otherwise, we would have invented the machine that does it, or the drug, or whatever, the food. We can't have babies anymore. You say, what? What do you mean? Yeah, we can have babies. No, we can't. We're not having babies. We're having fewer and fewer babies. So that lady at the beginning of my talk here didn't have to worry about that. They don't have to put a 1 child per family or 2 child per family law. We're not having babies. We're not having babies because we moved to the cities, and what takes over are density-dependent birth rates. So we're not having babies because couples in the city don't have babies. Cities are no place for a baby. It was in the countries where our great-grandmothers, and so on, had 10 babies. Half of them died and 5 continued living. No problem. Today, we're not having babies to begin with. We have one, maybe, and treat them like like a god, the only baby you're gonna have, So, oh, he looks like me. I'm gonna, and they're expensive, and then you don't have time for them anyways. You get a babysitter to take care of them because you got to go to work, and so on and so forth. So no, we're not gonna have 10 babies anymore. No woman's gonna do that. And so partly because they're expensive, and the culture in the city develops in a given way. And that was inevitable that we moved from the country to the city. The other one is that there's no room in the city. Again, room also in this sense means economics. Okay, there's no economics in the city to have babies. And then what? Are you going to have an apartment that you can barely pay the rent on? You're going to have 10 babies in your apartment? So no, the baby era is gone. We're not going to have babies anymore. One woman can have a baby. 10 women will not have a baby. That's the issue. It's a numbers issue. Okay, so no, babies are out. And yeah, just in case, here's the issue people should answer, which is what this fellow who just made the last questionnaire, the last comment, addressed, and that's why did the animals in the sea die at the same time as the animals on land? Okay, and if you can figure that out, okay, maybe have a clue to how the animals disappeared in the past, and whether that same mechanism, whether we humans can overcome that same mechanism.